Welcome everyone to the last episode of Season 1 of Voices of Rondo podcast. I'm your host, Moises. I'm a senior at Brooklyn Center High School, and I'm joined here by my fellow hosts here.
My name is Erica Lee. I'm from Brooklyn Center High School.
And we're also joined by...
I am Rafi Karpowitz, and I'm from Central High School, although I am currently zooming in to this discussion from college in Philadelphia.
We have a special guest here, the Executive Director of Reconnect Rondo, Keith Baker.
I'm so glad to be here with you, Moises, Erica, as well as Rafi. Thank you for asking me to join you.
We felt it was really vital as a youth council to invite you on here as the director of Reconnect Rondo, just to talk about the project and the land bridge and all the ins and outs of it all.
Yeah. So to begin, we wanted to ask you how you got involved with Reconnect Rondo and with the idea of the land bridge and how this entire project started. What's the story behind Reconnect Rondo and the land bridge?
Right. Well, thanks for the question. The idea of a land bridge or a CAP emerged in 2009 when the community was outraged by not having any stops along the Central Light Rail corridor on University Avenue. And as a result of having no stops, the community began to really push back on Met Council a little bit and making certain demands appropriately to ensure that stops were along the Central Light Rail corridor. And I think that's so important to kind of begin there because, as I said, the idea of a CAP or a land bridge started there. And then over time, folks like Deb Montgomery, people like Nick Kalik, folks like Mr. Marvin Anderson, all of them descendants of Rondo, began to push forward on this idea of a CAP or a land bridge. For me, I got introduced to the idea when Mr. Anderson and others asked me to a meeting because they knew I had worked for the Department of Transportation. And this was about 2015. I had left the Department of Transportation, but it was an opportunity for me to help them see the possibility that this is something that can happen from a transportation standpoint. And we even visited Seattle, we visited Texas, and saw them firsthand, which really allowed for this to emerge. Reconnect Rondo didn't launch until 2017 formally as a 501c3 or a nonprofit. And if we can imagine a relay race, we were past the baton, if you will, to kind of further the idea that surfaced in 2009 initially from the community.
I still think that's crazy how like the light rail originally had no stops in Rondo. Like it was just going straight through this community, but wasn't even serving them like at all.
It tells you what it reminds you of is exactly what happened when the freeway came through back in the 50s. Yeah. It didn't consider the community that was already living there. So it didn't do a solid enough job in what they call the environmental impact assessments and so on and so forth. So it really was important that the community kind of pointed out that, pushed back a bit, and now we have this idea called a land bridge that we're pushing forward on today.
Right, and there's also another route too, a northern route, but that they didn't consider for some reason. But I want to ask you, since the land bridge will run through Grotto and Chatsworth Street, that's over half a mile. Why is that significant to the Rondo community? Why is it there?
Well, I mean, I suppose a land bridge, when we think about I-94 corridor, St. Paul to Minneapolis, the idea can be placed anywhere because the historic footprint of Rondo is Rice Street to Lexington. But it seemed like a natural place to start because the commemorative plaza is on Fisk and Concordia, but it was almost the center place between Dale and Lexington. And so just from a placement standpoint, I think there was a decision that would start here because we couldn't cover the entire historic footprint from Rice Street to Lexington. How do we find a spot that would work best? The other thing, if you remember the area, Chatsworth is a pedestrian crossover. You can walk across.
Right.
Grotto is a pedestrian crossover. So it was really a natural place where we know already there are crossovers in transportation. So we also consider those kinds of things without interrupting the exits and the entrances and that kind of thing.
Right. And like when you go about describing the land bridge to get people to really understand what this is, you often bring up these 4 cases. You bring up this technical case, business case, moral case, and just case. So I was wondering if you wanted to go a little more in depth on what those mean.
Yeah, I travel in 4s, always. So the technical case is, we've got an audience, the Department of Transportation, we've got the city, we've got the county, we've got Met Council. These are folks that really have to be presented information in their language, right? So that's the technical case. The business case side of the equation, well, to go back to the technical side, to make the technical case, the question that has to be answered is, can a land bridge be built, right? So that's what that technical case is. The business case is, a lot of folks lost. And we had to make sure that we were understanding what the transactional loss, who lost homes, how many homes, 700 businesses or 700 homes, 300 businesses. What's the amount of money we're talking about? What's the business side, right? And clearly, if the homes had not been taken, the value would be upwards of $200 million. That's the loss. It's the business case. But it's also about, so what can the land bridge bring about? The moral case speaks for itself as well. It's unconscionable that communities were destroyed by a freeway system and lost so much. So there's a moral case to be made, right? Because the decision was intentional, as you had mentioned, the northern route, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't have to take it through Rondo,
Right.
No,
but that was an intentional decision. It was an immoral decision from a policy standpoint, I say, right?
Right.
But then this is really a time where we've really got to advocate justice, right? Justice for all. So it's a just case. So technical case, business case, moral case, and a just case.
Thank you for watching our podcast. If you like what you see, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get notified when we put out new podcast episodes.